tough times when Japan was kicking our butt, and so he had an incredible work ethic, and he was not going to sit at home and just get a union check. So when he would get laid off for a little time, we would do all kinds of odd jobs. I could bore you to death with all the crazy stuff that we would do to make money. We bred dogs at one point, Shih Tzus, because there was a mad run on Shih Tzus, selling trailers because there was whatever it took to put money on the table. But what he wasn't going to do was take a government check or a union check. And if he was laid off for a long time, we'd get up and move. And so I did most of my growing up in Oklahoma, a little town called Noble, which is near Norman, where Oklahoma University's at. Don't go look for the town anymore because Norman kind of ate it. It grew over it. It ain't there no more. But we moved when I was in high school to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and that's where I finished high school, in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And then I joined the Army and was everywhere. Right? I enlisted in the Army as a combat engineer. I tell people I was a private combat engineer long enough to know I didn't like either one of those things. So I got a scholarship, an Army ROTC scholarship. I went to Purdue University, got a degree in engineering. I was not a great engineer, but I did graduate. So I was because all I wanted to do was get back in the Army. And so I completed that degree and came back in the Army as an artillery lieutenant. All told, 25 years in the Army active duty. I served 2 tours in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan. 1 in Jordan when ISIS invaded Iraq. I took my battalion in Jordan. We came to Leavenworth in 2006. And at the time, I was stationed out at Fort Irwin, California. We had just gotten cell phones. Cell phones were a newfangled thing. We were, frankly, late adopters. And I'm standing out in the middle of the desert at NTC, the National Training Center. We're in the middle of a rotation. And I hear a phone ringing. And I'm like, oh yeah, I've got a phone out here. And so I pick up the phone and it's my wife. I had sent her ahead because we were getting ready to PCS to Fort Leavenworth. I'd sent her ahead to find a house. And she called and she said, hey, I found a restaurant. I'm like, what? I said to find a house. She said, shut up, we're getting a restaurant. And it was this little place, a little 19-seat place about 6 blocks from the front gate of Fort Leavenworth. Right now it's Bill's Kitchen. It used to be a catfish place, but before that it was Bon Thai restaurant. And my wife's an incredible cook, as you have seen demonstrated tonight, and the place just took off. And so we, after 2 years, we moved into the place that we're now at. In 2008, we moved into the place we're at now. And during that time, I went to CGSC, which is what I'd come to Fort Leavenworth for. I went to Iraq for 6 months for my first tour, and then I came back for the School of Advanced Military Studies there at Fort Leavenworth. And the Army said, hey, you got to leave Leavenworth, because, there's nothing for an artilleryman to do there that's really, the war was going on, we need you in the fight. And so luckily, they didn't send me out of Kansas. They sent me to Fort Riley, Kansas, and I served there in the Big Red 1 for 5 years. My wife followed me to open a restaurant, and so we have another restaurant in Manhattan, another Bon Thai. And then she opened another restaurant, a noodle shop in Aggieville. And then while I was deployed to Afghanistan from there, she opened another restaurant in Lawrence. I called her one night, she's like, hey, we got another restaurant. I'm like, yeah, I guess we do. So during COVID, we couldn't find anybody to work. Those businesses were doing great, but that's really when the workforce problem, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit, but that's when the workforce problem really got acute. And you can't have a restaurant without people working. The first restaurant that closed was the one in Aggieville. It was a noodle shop. I couldn't find anybody to work. We had to close it. So we still have the Bon Thai in Manhattan, but we don't have the noodle shop in Aggieville. Then in Lawrence, it was down to my wife, my son, and one cook trying to keep the restaurant open. We were holding on, hoping that the kids coming back from college or for college would want a job, but they'd all got stimulus checks. They didn't want a job. And so we couldn't find anybody to work, and we ended up having to close in Lawrence. So we're down to 2 restaurants, one in Leavenworth and one in Manhattan. And God smiled on us. They're doing great. I know that there were a lot of people that always knew they were going to run for office, since they were little kids. I meet them too, like their parents bring them to me, and they're like, hey, my son, he wants to be president of the United States, and I meet him and I talk to him. That's great. If you feel called, you feel called. I'll tell you what, I'm not one of those people. If you told me 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that I would be running for re-election in my 3rd term, I would have laughed in your face, because this was the furthest thing from my mind. My plan, and if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, right? My plan was to be a professor, because when I was at Fort Riley, I very slowly got my PhD in history at K-State. And I was going to be a history professor. I was going to grow my hair long, get fat, write books, right? And God had another plan. What got me in, and I did end up being a professor. When I retired from the Army, I got a job at Wichita State University. And so in the fall, when I'm not in the legislature, because we're a part-time legislature, I go down there a day a week. I got all my classes jammed in one day, and I go down there. I'm a tenure-track professor in the Homeland Security program. And that's a long story. I can tell you another time if you'd like to hear it. But so I am still a professor, but I'm also your state representative. And the reason I'm your state representative is because when I was first retired, I was waiting to start my job because I had all this leave saved up because leaders never get to take leave. My wife and I were talking about how we could never find anybody to work. Even before COVID, workforce was a problem in Leavenworth. We could never find anybody to work. And so I started digging into the problem, and at one point I thought that I was going to start a nonprofit, because what I discovered is, and it's in my neighborhood, I mean, I'm not talking bad about them, these are my neighbors up in North Leavenworth. I live on Kickapoo, right off of 7th Street. I tell people I live 4 doors down from Leavenworth Liquors, because if you walk around the corner, that's my house, right? And there are so many people in my neighborhood that are either unemployed or underemployed and living in the system. Living on food stamps, living on disability, living in a system that won't let them make over a certain amount. And so I thought I was going to start a nonprofit to try to get folks job training and get them back into the workforce and get them growing their lives. But as I talked to a lot of smart people, I discovered that it's our fault. It's our fault. And I say ours because the government's ours, and we pay people to stay poor. Not intentionally, we're just trying to help them make sure that they've got food and they can clothe their kids and all those things. But the effect of what we're doing is we are paying to keep people poor, because we tell them if you make $16,000, you get a check for $20,000 or whatever it is, or an EBT, and you get a phone and you get all these other benefits. If you make $16,001, you don't get nothing. And so if you had grown up in that system, what would you do? I know what I would do. If I'd grown up and my mom and my grandma and my great-grandma had all been in that system, I'd do the same thing. I'd make $16,000 so that I could get that additional money to feed my kids, right? Feed my family. And so my original idea was to do something to pull people out of that through nonprofits and all that. But what I discovered is that the problem is statutory. And the only way I'm going to fix it, and the only way I'm going to fix Leavenworth, is to run for office, get elected, and change the laws. And I've been working on that since I went up there, but a lot of what I'm doing is stopping bad ideas, frankly. When the governor, during COVID, wanted to remove all the work requirements for food stamps, Pat Proctor was the loudest voice up there screaming to stop her from doing that, because you're just making it worse. You're just pouring gas in the fire if you don't even make people work anymore, make people hold a job. A law that we passed since I've been up there that I've been very vocal about, that I'm very happy we did, was if you're working less than 30 hours a week and you don't have dependents or something like that prevents you from doing it, you're going to do job training the rest of that time. Because if you're working 30 hours a week and you're still on food stamps, you clearly don't have the job skills that you need to get a job that will lift you out of that situation. And so we pass it along. We've slowly expanded it to apply to more people because it's not, like I said, it's not that these people are bad people. It's that they haven't seen another way. And what I want to do is show them another way. I want to show them what it can be like to be earning enough money to pay your bills and to have a home and to send your kids to college and grow your life and grow your kids' lives and grow their futures. Because once they do it, once they see it happen in their own lives, they won't turn back. But if they never get the opportunity to see it, you're never going to get there. We're just going to have another generation in this wheel. And frankly, it is immoral. It is immoral to keep people trapped in that system. And that's what sent me to Topeka. After I got to Topeka, and I started to really understand the problem that we have in Leavenworth, that's only a facet of the problem. There are a lot of other reasons that every time you go to Leavenworth, another storefront's closed. Every time you go to Leavenworth, there's another house being torn down. Every month, another family in our neighborhood is giving up and moving down to Basel or moving to Johnson County or moving down to Lansing. And when they leave, they're taking the services with them, right? Because all the people with the money and the insurance and things like that are moving out of Leavenworth, and our hospital closes because there's nobody to pay the bills for the hospital because the only people walking in the front door are people without insurance. And TRICARE doesn't reimburse at rates to keep the Cushing Hospital open, so the hospital closes. I get tickled every municipal election season when they're doing the debate for city commission. Somebody says, well, I'm going to get us a grocery store in North Leavenworth. Well, you want to get us a grocery store in North Leavenworth, you need to have people living in North Leavenworth who can afford to buy groceries. That's how you get groceries in North Leavenworth, right? And it's kind of that Democrat mindset where government can solve all our problems. No, government can't solve all our problems. Government needs to get out of the way, make it affordable to own a house or buy your first house. Make it affordable to buy or rent a commercial property so you can open a small business. Not pay people to stay home. Encourage people to go to work so that all those small businesses have people in them working, growing their futures, but also growing our economy. And so that's a lot of what I've been doing, serving you over these first 2 terms in Topeka. A big component of our problem in Leavenworth is property taxes. And I'm not telling you anything you don't know, because right now all the municipal governments are meeting and deciding they're going to go above revenue neutral, which means they're going to raise our taxes. Even if they don't raise our mill levy, the valuations are going to raise your taxes, right? It's a shell game. People can't afford to stay in their houses because, the number of people I meet when I'm knocking on doors that tell me, I've paid off my house, but I'm paying more in taxes now than I used to pay on my house payment. I mean, I see some north-south nods here. I mean, there's some people in this room in that situation. My house, I told you, I live 4 doors down from the Leavenworth Liquors. All I do is mow the lawn, and my property taxes go up 15% every year like clockwork. I mean, I feel like I should stop mowing the lawn. It's cheaper to pay the fine. We are driving people out of our community. We're right next to the river. People can move over to Missouri and pay less in property taxes and live for cheaper. And we're in a race to hold on to these people or keep them from leaving. I spent a lot of time. I really worked for 3 years, really 4 if you get right down to it, to do disabled veteran property tax relief. And I get a legitimate question. I get people asking, what about everybody else? Well, first of all, the bill that we actually passed also had seniors in it. 65 and older would have also gotten property tax freeze. That's the bill that we sent to the governor that she vetoed at the end of the session. But we really need to have these veterans because these veterans, a lot of them have retirement checks. All of them, or a lot of them have disabilities, and those are the folks we're trying to hang on to because they get a disability check. They have great health insurance. The VA hospital, I'm disabled. I don't qualify for any of the bills because I make too much money and I'm not 100% disabled. But I'm disabled and I get my health care from the VA. But very little health care is actually administered at the VA. When you get right down to it, a lot of the stuff that the VA hospital does is geriatric care. So, when I had that hand surgery, they sent me to a doctor on the economy and they paid for it. So all those disabled veterans, they prop up our healthcare system when they go on the economy to get their health care, and then the federal government pays for it. It's infusing federal dollars into our healthcare system. That's how you get Cushing back, is you get disabled veterans to stay here in Kansas because you're giving them that property tax break instead of going to Texas or going to Florida, which is where they're going now because they have an exemption for disabled veterans for their property tax. And so we got to hang on to those folks. And that's a big component of getting people back here and getting the services back here. The statistics just came out for this year for population growth in cities in Kansas. Where do you think Leavenworth's at? The city of Leavenworth, out of 630 cities, is in the bottom 13 for population growth. We have negative population growth right now. It's south of 1,000 people that our population's gone down by, and you think, well, that's not a lot. Well, the rest of the country is growing, right? The rest of the country is growing in population. So when your city is going down, and when your state is staying stagnant, which is what's happening in Kansas, your relative power in the country goes down. Because how do they determine how many congressmen you get in the U.S. Congress? Your population. How do they decide how many electoral votes you get in the presidential election? It's the number of congressmen plus the number of senators, which is 6 right now. If our population stays flat and Texas continues to boom and Florida continues to boom, we're going to lose one voice in Congress in this next census. So we're in a race against time. The next census is coming up at the next decade. So in 2030, they're going to do another census. And if we haven't fixed and reversed this problem, we're going to lose a congressman. Now, I've got to vote on which congressman we should lose. We should lose Shrew Stevens, but we're still losing a voice in Kansas and a voice in presidential elections. And that goes down to like how much attention gets paid to Kansas's issues in Washington, D.C. Okay? So we're in a race against time. The other thing that I'm trying to do, one of the other things that I'm trying to do in Topeka is do something to combat this mess we've got at the border. We're not a border state, but when you have, 20 million illegal aliens, which is what we're on track to have by the end of the year, flooding our country, every state's a border state. It don't matter if you're on the border. The problems are coming here. The problems are coming here. So one of the things I did this year, I don't know if you guys are watching the news, but Texas was in a fight with the federal government because Texas was trying to put wire on the river and the federal government was trying to stop them from doing it. Well, the federal court said, federal government, you can take it down, but you can't stop Texas from putting it up. And so what's happening there, it's kind of like that bridge in Apocalypse Now, where like every day the Americans put up the bridge and every night the Viet Cong blow it down, except it's Texas and Joe Biden. Texas is putting up the wire and Joe Biden's pulling it down. And if you don't think walls work, guess which border state has the lowest illegal immigration rates on the border in our country? Texas, because they got razor wire. Now all the illegal aliens have moved to Arizona and California to try to cross the border there, a little bit of New Mexico. Because in Texas you can't get across the border because there's razor wire there. Imagine that. Obstacles work. So a resolution that I passed called on the governor to send the National Guard to help Texas. It asserted that Kansas supports Texas in its fight against the federal government, which matters because this is the states invoking their right in the Constitution to self-defense. It's written right into the Constitution that if the federal government is not protecting the state has the right to protect itself. And that's what Texas is doing, and that's what every state in the union has the right to do. And so that resolution says that we support Texas in that fight. That resolution, or in addition to the resolution, we put some teeth to it. We appropriated $16 million to actually send the Guard to Texas. We're waiting on the governor, because the governor's the commander-in-chief. By separation of powers, we can't order her to send the National Guard. All we can do is give her the resources to do it. And I'm hoping that she'll do it. But, you know, it's Governor Kelly, so we're working on that. So I'm not going to wait for Governor Kelly to help Texas secure our border, because we've got a problem right here, right now. You know, we talked about it a little bit. Because Joe Biden signed an executive order that said that private prisoners or private prison companies can't guard prisoners, Core Civic had to shut down the Leavenworth Detention Center down behind Sec Ford. When they're a private company, like any other private company, they want business from the federal government and from the governments so that they can employ their people. And I sympathize. I wish they would reopen the Leavenworth Detention Center as a holding facility for federal prisoners, which is what it was built to do. But they can't do that because of Joe Biden's executive order. So they, all over the country where this has happened, have been trying to get municipal governments, cities and counties, to contract with them to guard illegal aliens. And so what they wanted to do is they wanted to get the county of Leavenworth to enter an agreement with the federal government to house illegal aliens here in Leavenworth, and then we would pay Core Civic as a subcontractor to actually do the work. Okay, I don't know what you think. I think that's the worst idea I've heard all day. So, when I caught wind of it, I got the word out in my newsletter. If you're not on my email newsletter, can you hold up the little flyer there? That little flyer, there's a little QR code on it. If you scan it with your phone, it allows you to sign up for my newsletter. If you're non-technologically inclined like me, just put your email address on that sign-in sheet in there, and I'll get you on the newsletter. But I do things like this. I tell you, hey, the county is going to contract with Core Civic to house illegal aliens in our town. If you don't like it, go to the meeting or contact your commissioners, and I give you like the method to contact the commissioners. Hey, if you don't want a garbage transfer station right in the middle of downtown Leavenworth, the city planning commission is going to talk about it on this day. Contact your city commissioner, go to the meeting. So that's what I do in my newsletter. It's not spam, it's not fundraising, it's to tell you what's going on. Because you're not going to get it in the Leavenworth Times is all the news that was fit to print 2 days ago, right? I mean, you're not going to get it from the Leavenworth Times, and it's frankly not the news that's fit to print. It's a Democrat rag. But that's what I use my newsletter for. And I mobilized folks, and we got it shut down. But don't think they're not going to try again. Don't think they're already talking to the city because the county said no, even though Vicky caused all for it. The city said no, or the county said no, so now they're trying to fish around with the city. So I've got my ear to the ground. I'll let you know if they're going to try with the city. But that's another way that I've tried to help with this border crisis that's impacting our town. The final thing is fentanyl. In my neighborhood, up in North Leavenworth, we've had nearly a dozen people killed just in the last year by fentanyl overdose. And hey, I'm with you. Drugs are bad. Kids get taught their whole lives drugs are bad, but kids do stupid things. And these are not like hardcore addicts that are dying. Fentanyl is being put in pills that look like Percocet, that look like Oxycontin, that look like other drugs. And you know, kids, they do stupid things, and they experiment with these drugs that they think are Percocet or Oxycontin, and they're fentanyl, and it kills them. You know, the Kansas Bureau of Investigations, I'm on the Kansas Security Committee, it's a joint committee, and we had a hearing this last summer. The Kansas Bureau of Investigations said that they seized, this is just what they seized, them and the Highway Patrol seized enough fentanyl to kill every man, woman, and child in the state of Kansas 5 times over. And that's what they found. That's not what made it onto the streets and got sold to our kids. And they also said something terrifying. Those pills that they're making to look like something else, 60% of those pills have a lethal dose of fentanyl. 60%. It's like playing Russian roulette with 4 of the chambers filled. It's insane. I mean, what kind of business model is that? Kill all you want, we'll make more. You know, I mean, it's so. I did a couple things this year. I co-sponsored along with 3 other legislators a bill to expand the Good Samaritan law, because what's happening is one kid overdoses and all the other kids, instead of calling 911, they run because they got drugs on them. That it basically gives them immunity if they call 911 and they stay on the scene. It has all kinds of exemptions. If you're on parole for drugs, if you've got a dealer quantity, you're still going to jail. But if it's just a bunch of people using drugs and one person dies or is dying, they can call 911 and save that person's life. But we also got to get these people that are dealing this poison off the streets. And so we also pass different penalties, because this tidal wave has hit us so fast that the laws aren't keeping up with this epidemic. And so we stiffen the punishments so we can put these people away when we catch them dealing this stuff, so we can try to stop this poison that's flooding our streets. But at the end of the day, these are all just band-aids. These are just ways to address the symptoms of the problem. The way to fix the problem is to close the border. And I don't know about you, but I don't think Sleepy Joe's going to close the border if we put him back in office. And I don't think that if they replace him on the ticket and it's Kamala Harris or it's some other Democrat, I don't think they're going to seal the border. You know, we have got to get Donald J. Trump reelected to office, or we ain't going to have a country anymore. I'm not trying to put too fine a point on this, but they just took a shot at the man tonight. If we don't get that guy in office, and we don't get the border sealed, and we don't get our federal government back in the control of an elected official instead of a shadowy group of people that are using a puppet to extend their agenda, we are not going to have another election. If we do have another election, it's going to be a sham. It's going to be a Soviet election. Please, 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 get out and vote. Don't just get out and vote November. You know, you just heard some great candidates talking to you about how the Democrats here in Leavenworth County, they changed tactics. They know they can't win with a D next to their name, so they're all running as Republicans. And so you got to get out August 6th and vote in the primary too. You know, people ask me, how's my race going? I tell them I'm running against 2 Democrats, one in the primary and one in the general. So I'm one of those people that has a primary. And so you got to get out. You got to get out. You got to vote in August to clean up our county government, and you got to get out and you got to vote in November to put Donald J. Trump back in office. Because if we don't, we're not going to have a country anymore. All right, I'm going to stop there. I've depressed you enough, and answer any questions that you have.
Matt, when does early voting start?
Well, thank you for asking. So early voting starts this Wednesday. So there's 3 ways to vote, right? You can vote by mail, which I don't do. I know a lot of people don't like to do that. They don't trust the mail system. They don't trust the system. But you can vote by mail. And if you need to do that, or you have somebody who can't get out to the polls who needs to do that, please get with me afterwards. I'll get them all the paperwork so they can ask for a ballot. You can also vote early. And I do vote early. I do vote early because on election day, I'm driving people to the polls and I don't have time to vote. And so you can, or I'm calling y'all to remind you to get out to vote if you haven't voted yet. So early voting starts on Wednesday. You can vote Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the county courthouse. And it's super simple. You just walk in. I don't know if they'll have the clerk's office or they'll have it downstairs, but you just walk in, you show your ID, they give you a ballot for your precinct, you fill it out, and you put it in the vote count machine and you're done. It's very quick, it's very easy, there's no lines. You can also, of course, vote on election day at your polling place. If you don't know where that is, please get with me. I'll help you find your polling place. And that's from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on August 6th. And so please get out and vote. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I got a question. Have you gotten or seen these text messages you're getting from your opponent as you're talking?
Yeah, so thank you for asking about that. So who got a text message survey about the Republican primary? Okay, so there was a text message that went out, and it was a survey. Who are you going to vote for in the primary, me or my opponent? And if you said me, it told you that I want Joe Biden to fill out all the ballots or some crap. So yeah, I'm not sure who did that survey. It wasn't a survey, it was basically an attack on me. But what the attack says is that I oppose eliminating drop boxes. That is not true. Okay? So I'm the chair of the House Elections Committee, and I sat in a conference committee with the Senate, Fed, and State Committee, and we got that bill drafted and got it to the floor of both houses, the Senate and the House. Those bills never got a vote. I don't get to pick what bills come to the floor for a vote and what bills don't. And I'll tell you, our problem is not me, and our problem is not Leavenworth County. The reason that we can't get rid of ballot drop boxes is because of Johnson County. Johnson County voters, they love their drop boxes. They love the mail-in vote. And a lot of the Republicans from those districts, they don't want to have to vote on eliminating drop boxes because they're afraid that their voters will punish them. But if I were king for a day, we would not have drop boxes because, you know, in Leavenworth County, ballot drop boxes are pretty secure. I mean, the drop box is sitting right in front of the county courthouse, which is sitting right in front of the Justice Center. There's a camera on it watching everybody put the ballot in the ballot box. But as the elections chair for the House Committee on Elections, I've been all over the state looking at different election offices and talking to different clerks. And I've seen counties where the drop box is a slit in the side of the wall where you can put your ballot, your property tax payment, or your application for a license plate. That is not secure. That is not secure. And so we're having a lot of difficulty eliminating them because we can't get the votes. So what I've been trying to do for the last 2 years is get some kind of regulation. Give the Secretary of State the authority to set minimum state security standards for all the drop boxes in the state. Because right now there's no standards at all. A county can do whatever they want.